Gut Jan zu alle Chassidim. Heint, bei euch ist schon Nacht. Heint ist ein Meurendike Jontef. Das ist nicht der Jontef, was wir haben allein mechadisch gewesen. The Rebbe told us this great significance of this day. The Rebbe said, today habe ich sich verbunden mit euch und ihr mit mir. There's no words that could bring out the greatness of this day. The greatest matane that the Eibishter gave us is the Rebbe. There was a chassid, Rebbe Avram Ayora, everybody remembers him, Stamer, or heard of him. He had a saying, Adank dem Eibishten vom Rebben, in Adank dem Rebben von dem Eibishten. What does that mean? A Rebbe is what connects us to the Eibishter. This is clear in the second parak of Tanya. You would think that the Alter Rebbe would talk about a Rebbe maybe after the end of the Tanya. First you know learn Hasidus, and then the Alter Rebbe puts this in Parak Beis. The Alter Rebbe says unbelievable words. The Alter Rebbe learns that when the Torah says Uledavka boy, it's a separate mitzvah in the Tayag mitzvahs. The Alter Rebbe learns, it says Uledavka boy, so the Gemara says it goes on a Hadbik b'Talmidei Chachamim. Was heißt Hadbik b'Talmidei Chachamim? Es steht in der Torah boy. Kommt sogar in die Gemara. Hadbik b'Talmidei Chachamim. Ich verstehe nicht, was tut sich da. Der Teure sagt Hadbik bei. Sagt die Gemara, es meint Hadbik b'Talmidei Chachamim. So the Alter Rebbe explains that a Talmud Chacham doesn't mean a great scholar, but it means a Talmud, he is a Neshama d'Atzilis von Chachme d'Atzilis. And in Chachme d'Atzilis, the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Hey, that in Chachme d'Atzilis is scheint der Eibishter. Kabalti mimoiri, hu levadoi hu, v'yein zu lasai, zu hi madreges hachachme. So when you're dovek to a Rebbe, the Eibishter shines in Chachma d'Atzilis, in the neshama of the Rebbe, and that's how you become dovek in the Eibishter, because it's Hainu Hach. The Frierdiker Rebbe said once himself, Seid mekusher zu mir, wird ihr sein mekusher zu wem ich bin mekusher. There's nothing greater that we could imagine that the Eibishter should give us. He gave us the Rebbe. And through the Rebbe, we have a much deeper shaykhus to the Eibishter. Also sagt der Eibishter in the Torah, Hadbik b'Talmidei Chachamim. Reminds me of a story of my father, alav hashalom, when he was a chassan, and my Zayder, who was his father-in-law, was the Kapishonitzer Rebbe, and the Kapishonitzer Rebbe was very strong b'yedidus with the Frierdiker Rebbe. My Zayder asked the Frierdiker Rebbe about my father. Is there a Talmud Chochem? He asked the Frierdiker Rebbe about him. So the Frierdiker Rebbe answered, by uns is a Talmud Chochem gor another Zach. He was referring to the Tanya, that a Talmud Chacham means a Neshama Datzilis. But that's what the Tanya says, that the way to be Mekusha to the Eibishter, you could keep 612 mitzvahs. Every mitzvah is tzavtze v'chibur, but it's still not vekis. The vekis in the pshat, when you say tzavtze v'chibur, there are two elements. There's the mitzvah and there's the mitzvah. And they are attached. The vekis is it's not even two, it becomes one. When we have a Rebbe with Dovuk in the Eibishter, this is Yudalit Kislev. So before I go into stories and very interesting things that I hope you'll enjoy, we have to understand this day is also a Moiradika Acharayistika day. Because if we have a Rebbe, we have to shape up and we have to realize my father once, he was the Menahel in Atvotsk, when one day the Frierdiker Rebbe made a spontaneous visit to the yeshiva to daven mincha. They daven mincha, they didn't say Tachnun. So the Frierdiker Rebbe turned to my father and asked him, how come they didn't say Tachnun? So my father said, because the Rebbe's gekommen. Like a yontif. So the Frierdiker Rebbe replied, as a Rebbe's da, is a Tam nicht zu sindigen, aber nicht a Tam nicht zu sagen Tachnun. This has a very, very deep message. Azar Tag wie Dalit Kislev, monzig von uns gar etwas anderes. And it soll Tage sein, sich sieht ihm, that the Rebbe should have nachas, das is meine Rachoset. So we have to make a good cheshbon hanefesh today. Can the Rebbe consider me, das is meine Rachoset? Chassidus is not minhagim. Chassidus is a ganz anderer Sort Mensch. A Chassid is a durchgewegte Yerushalayim, a pnimistische Yerushalayim, a Mensch, was liegt in Göttlichkeit, liegt in Ruchnius, gar eine andere Sache. One time I heard this from my father in America. One year he went into the Frierdiker Rebbe and Yechidus. And the Frierdiker Rebbe was very sad. I don't know what the word, welche richtige Werte, but he was very down. And the Frierdiker Rebbe actually explained why. And he said, he doesn't see that his Tamimim are way above the average Bach of a yeshiva. That's why he was down. My father right away replied to the Frierdiker Rebbe, as es nicht da sei. A die ganze Welt hat a Moiradike der Cheretz von Atomim von Lubavitch. Wo Atomim geht, in andere yeshivas, guckt man auf dem gar anders. Those words had a tremendous puller on the Frierdiker Rebbe, to the point that after this Yechidus, the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he went back to his cheder, the Beis Harav saw a whole shinui on the Frierdiker Rebbe, and they were very curious what happened that night on Yechidus that changed the whole Matziv Haruach. And they found out it was this Yechidus that my father was able to tell the Frierdiker Rebbe, I says, Yodadam in the Flinu. Kommt the Chois as Heint, Yudalit Kislev, we have to make a cheshbon hanefesh, a wee take, v'neflinu. Another story. My shver was the Rabbi Yitzchak Kendall. He was the Rav of Montreal. The Frierdiker Rebbe made him the Rav. He was the Rav of the Avanash. He was the Rosh Hashiva of Tabcha Tamimim of Montreal. And once he went into Yechidus to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was talking with him about Lubavitcher Shchita. That Lubavitcher Shchita has to be a shochet who learns Chassidus. And the Rebbe explained, being that the Rambam paskins, that in order to have Av and Yira Shemayim that a shochet has to have, you have to learn about the Eibishter, you have to have his boininess. Keitzad Yavai La'avosai V'yirosai, says the Rambam, Kishi is boinin. Kommt der Chais that a Chassid, a Lubavitcher Shochet, has to be someone who learns Chassidus B'Poil. But the Ikka, what I want to share with you, is a moiredike word that the Rebbe said to my shver. Lubavitch, if it's called Lubavitcher Shchita, Lubavitch das meint men mir. It's not an organization, not a group of Hasidim. The word Lubavitch is mamish kodesh kadosh. Das meint men mir. Then anything that has Lubavitcher name on it, it's the Rebbe's name. And if it's the Rebbe's name, he wants it to be Azoi, and then it could be called his name. This is a shock, should make a shock to us, to realize that we are not just followers of the Rebbe. If we are called Lubavitcher Chassidim, we have the Rebbe on, so we have to act that people should look at us, should see this is the Rebbe. Don't get the Rebbe. So this is just some words of his Eureris to realize the Gewaltigkeit of this day. Before we go to stories of very interesting things I hope you will enjoy, I just want to mention again the Rebbe. There's a lot of stories of different Yechidasin or Shluchim where the Rebbe many times said alone that his name is on it. There's a story which is very negeya for all of us who are listening to hear. I heard this from Rabbi Kotlarski. It's a very important story. There was a shliach who had a gvir, shluchim matins are always to able to cover things, and to have a gvir is a good thing to have. Anyways, he has a gvir who calls him up to the shliach, listen, I have a box at a certain game. I don't know if it was not Nigeria, what game, baseball, whatever, a ball game, a box. What heißt a box? A special, you pay a lot of money to get front seats at a certain game, and this is a special chashivas, and dort kann nur reingehen, der was hat abgekauft den Box. So he tells the shliach, I want to invite you to this this ball game, because I'm going to have my chaverim here, and you're going to be able to say shalom aleichem to them. You'll get to know them. It'll open up for you. You'll be able to later go to these people because you met them already and on this setting. So it was a very tempting thing. Maybe it's kedai to go to this ball game because he's going to meet all these gevirim. Baruch Hashem, the shliach had edelkeit. And he realized, wait a minute, wo komme ich zu einem Ballgame? Das ist doch nicht kein, das ist nicht kein Malave Malke. Das ist was. So he wrote to the Rebbe. And he wrote to the Rebbe, Genoi, that his Gvir told him that this is a very good idea. He can meet Gvirim that he would never able to get into. And he writes to the Rebbe if it's kedai to go to this ball game. So the Rebbe answers him, if you're asking me al pidin, shaila l'rav, moira hira, go ask a rav. But if you're asking me my eitzah, I am not interested in attending that ball game. And if you go, you're taking me along. Das is a moiradike story. When we have the name Lubavitch, we are connected to the Rebbe. We have to act in a different anhage. It's expected from us moiradike things. It's expected us to be on our highest level of Yerushalayim, Edelkeit und alle Sachen, wie man soll sehen, das geht dem Rebbe zur Chassid, das ist repräsentiert der Rebbe. Ad kann the Verbringen part. So now I'd like to share with you some things that I heard from my father. Certain things are very, very interesting and important. There are minhagim that are in Beis Harav that are not so popular, but it really is not only for Beis Harav. The Rebbe once even said that it's really kedai that if we know about these hanhagas, that Hasidim should act that way. When my sister was going to get married, my father and mother went into the Rebbetzin, and she told about a lot of minhagim, about the kale, wie azoy man darf sich führen, and later on she was very insistent that that's the way we should conduct ourselves, even if it's difficult, even if it'll take mesiras nefesh. One of the things she said is that the kale's dress should not be white. And she said in the name of her father that that's minig hagoyim. The same thing she said that the crown, that there are kales that wear a crown on their head. Again, the Frierdiker Rebbe said it's minig hagoyim, not to have a crown. Another thing that the Frierdiker Rebbe said, very interesting, that nothing should be on the hair of the kala before the tichel that goes on the badecking. Peleplor, befetzich pasach yidin, that they wear a whole thing on the head. Okay, maybe later they take it off or they don't take it off, but was clear. Nothing goes, the first thing that goes on the kala's hair at the night of the Chasuna is the badecking tichel. Very important. Also, that the minig is by the Beis Harav, that by the Chasuna, the father and the mother go with the Chasun, and the father and the mother go with the kala. And that's how it was by the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the Chasuna, by her Chasuna. She even mentioned that she feels till today, when she told the story, she feels how her father held her hand, how tight he held, because they had to go down from a second floor all the way down to the street, I guess, to the chuppah, and he held her hand. That was the way, that's how you're supposed to go to the Chasuna, the father and the mother, and the father and the mother. Now I'll tell you a few things that, what I also heard that is very interesting. that the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he put on the gartel for the Rebbe by the Chasuna, the Frierdiker Rebbe said to the Rebbe that when he made Oizer Yisrael Bigvura in the morning, he had in mind this putting on the gartel of the Rebbe. By the Chasuna, my father remembers this, and he told us of this, that there had to be a tremendous Seder. The Frierdiker Rebbe made a moirdike Seder, which incidentally, I heard this just last night, that you couldn't even go into the Chasuna unless you had a card. There was no such a thing as anybody just pops in. You had to have a pass. Bei der Chasuna, der Frierdiker Rebbe hat angesagt, the Bochrim, that they, als der Cheres, whatever, they have to stand all the way in the back of the hall. This says, let's say if the Frierdiker Rebbe's the head table was all the way in Mizrach, the poor Bochrim had to stay so far they couldn't go any further, way back by the wall. But this was a moirdike Mesiras Nefesh, because everyone wanted to hear every word of the Frierdiker Rebbe, everything to hear, and they had to stand over there in the back. But because of their Mesiras Nefesh, Mashmas, Kabbalas Oil, to listen to the Frierdiker Rebbe, later the Frierdiker Rebbe went special all the way to the back. He had a towel on his shoulder, like kvayochel, like a waiter, and he personally, the Rebbe gave all the Bochrim l'chaim, and there was a whole sicha to them, als kirov, that the Bochrim listened to stay all the way in the back. By the Chasuna, I don't know if everybody knows this, but one of the Choshev Yidin that were there, that came, was the Amshin of a Rebbe. The Amshin of a Rebbe, Me'eze Tam Shiyiyah, had a special kirov from the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Amshin of a Rebbe came in middle of the chuppah, middle of the Maimah, middle of the Maimah. The Frierdiker Rebbe stopped the Maimah and waited till he sat down, and then asked Reshus by the Amshin of a Rebbe, should he continue? And then he continued. This is Mavhil, but das is the Meise. By the Chasuna, there was also Gewaldike Geoinim, there was the Lubliner Rav, Rameir Shapiro, there was Reb Menachem Zember. The Frierdiker Rebbe asked the Rebbe to talk in learning with Rameir Shapiro by the Chasuna. And the Rebbe spoke to him in learning, and afterwards he said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rameir Shapiro, I forget exactly the words, but that a Moridike Gorn Olam that he took for a native. The same way the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted that Rebbe Menachem Zember should talk with him in learning, but that wasn't not by the Chasuna. Then a few days later, Rebbe Menachem Zember had made an appointment with the Rebbe, then talked with him in learning, and it was also mafli his geoinis. My father had a schus to be by all the chasunis of the Frierdiker Rebbe's daughters. The Frierdiker Rebbe, my father had no money, and the Frierdiker Rebbe paid for his trips that he should be by the chasunis. So there's a lot of zechonis that he also told us about the other chasunis. So one of the things that is very interesting to mention, that the Chasuna of Rebbetzin Shendel was in a verworfen shtetl. There was not a lot of money, and it was a more mitzuntzum dike Chasuna. And that Shabbos, there was a bacher, was a Hasidic bacher, was in ganzen Mufshit. those of you who ever heard of Beryl Grossbaum, he's the Grossbaum's brothers that are in Toronto and different places. That's their father. Very chashuv, sweet Yid, a bitteldike Yid. He was Kvayochel, the Shabbos of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that Shabbos, Sheva Brachas. Also wie is a gewinner chassidische Bracha in ganzen ausgetan. So he was supposed to dalang zum Tisch. And it comes to the cholent, he tells the Frierdiker Rebbe, they forgot to make the no cholent. No cholent, there's no cholent. So they benched after the Suda. Then he discovered that there is cholent. So he told the Frierdiker Rebbe, mit gefunden cholent. So this is a very important story. So the Frierdiker Rebbe washed again to eat that cholent, that it should be b'tor Chasuna. This is a moedic story, how much Chasuna cholent means by Frierdiker Rebbe. I also told, and I also heard this, that there was once a time that the daughters were sitting Shabbos by the table, and they didn't eat up the cholent. They ate just a little bit. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, "A Michael von Shabbos lost me nicht über." And he took their cholent and he ate it. Murdered. He also told me that he heard from the Frierdiker Rebbe that Kasche, Kugel und Fleisch, so the Alte Rebbe said, is halacha leMoshe Messinai. Kasche was cholent for some reason. Kasche, Kugel und Fleisch is halacha leMoshe Messinai. Und der Seder is euchet halacha leMoshe Messinai. Als früher darf man teuer sein, der cholent, und nachdem der Kugel, und nachdem der Fleisch. So da Sippur, which is really a powerful Sippur, that the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, was once sitting Shabbos by the table, and was sitting there some kind of a, you'll soon find out who, some guy who wasn't so gehoben, and he was just minding his own business, and by this table hat gehabt the Fleisch for the Kugel and for the cholent. So Bestike, the Rebbe Rashab said, I don't know to whom, but to somebody, Mezolem nachgucken, they should find out more about him. And wait till you hear the next part. What's the pshat that we first eat the kugel and then the meat? So the kugel is ke'igul. This represents the tabas, kedushin, between the Eibishter and the Yidden. The cholent, the flesh, is v'hoya lebasa echad. So that's why before you eat the meat goes the kedushin. So you're supposed to eat first the kugel and then the flesh. As this guy had gehabt the meat before, so he was like saying on himself, Edis, that in his own life, had gehabt v'hoya lebasa echad before his kedushin. Everybody understands what that means. B'meile, this is an important story to know, and I want to say that the Rebbetzin told my sister, and another time that there was a lot of difficulties for a family to follow these minhagim, because you imagine going to a chasana, and everybody wears a collar, wears something on the head, and here this chasana now, there's going to be nothing on your head. You're going to come in with your hair without anything over your hair. No one does that. So the Rebbetzin realized that this is going to be something, but she said, a minute yisrael darfen upheaten, and it's okay even if it's like if it's uncomfortable. So it's very, and also the Rebbe was encouraging also my father that we soll upheaten these minhagim. So it's very important for people to know that yet the minig, the Rebbe once said to Reb Zalman Poizner on Yechidis, Why is a minhag so special? So the Rebbe gave the following mashal. He says there are 3 types of avodim. There is an eved that listens whatever the other tells him, he does. Benimshul, whatever it says mefurish in the Torah, he follows. Then there is a more übergegebener, loyal eved that you don't have to spell everything out. If you tell him beremes, he knows and he follows. That means a rabbana. Lekemide the rabbana and the loyremize bereiraisa. Everything is hinted already in the Torah. That's good enough for him. That means when you follow the rabbanon, you're demonstrating the übergegebenkeit that a hint is also enough. What says the Rebbe? What is a minhag? You are not told. You were never hinted. But you yourself are so devoted to the other that you feel this would bring him pleasure. He never told me, but that's my intuition. That is the groiskeit, the specialty of a minhag. A minhag means this came from Klal Yisrael. They felt this would be a special nachas ruach. So minhag Yisrael is very, very special. And if you look in Yom Yom or other places when it talks about a skashris, one of the things of a chassid is that he follows the minhagei chassidim. The Baal Shem Tov himself writes that when it says in the Gemara that when after Moshe Rabbeinu was victorious in the vikuach with the Malachim who claimed, why should you give the claim to the Eibishter? Why are you giving the Torah down here? Give it to us. And Moshe Rabbeinu was Menatzeach, and he said, you don't have a Yetzer Hara, you never went to Mitzrayim. So the Gemara says that because Moshe Rabbeinu was victorious, so the Malachim gave Moshe Rabbeinu matanis. Says the Baal Shem Tov, what was the matanis? Torah Moshe Rabbeinu got from the Eibishter. What did the Malachim give him? Minhagei Yisrael. So Minhagei Yisrael is moiradik. Meila, I'm sharing with you Minhagei Beis Harav that the Rabbeim wanted that we should follow suit. Derech Agav, the Rebbe's father gave Hoirah to the Rebbe that on the day of his chuppah he should learn Perek Chaf Hei in Tanya. Why? We don't know why. But if anybody learns Perek Chaf Hei in Tanya, he talks about Mesiras Nefesh on every mitzvah. And that's what you're supposed to do on the day of take upon yourself to learn that Perek. So I don't know how much time we have. I don't have a clock. Is it still, what time is it? I have a few more minutes. Okay, I'll continue a little bit more of things that I heard from my father, Benigeya, him and the Frierdiker Rebbe. When he was young, a teenager, the Frierdiker Rebbe once asked him on Yechidus, does he know by heart the 12 Prakim Tanya? That was a time that the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted that everyone should memorize it. So my father answered some kind of an excuse. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, a teretz idas aguter, aber mit darf sehen, als soll lekatchile nicht sein kan scheile. Everybody understands that point. Another beautiful story that I heard from my father, there was a time in America when the Frierdiker Rebbe had a heart attack, and it was a serious heart attack, and afterwards there was a whole zman that the Frierdiker Rebbe did not have Yechidus to give Chas V'Sholom, and he strained to the Frierdiker Rebbe. One day, the Frierdiker Rebbe said he wants to see Gute Freund. He wants to see Gute Freund. So, I guess Beis Harav or whatever made up that they're going to tell certain Hasidim to go past the Frierdiker Rebbe, but not to say a word. Just that they should pass him, but not to cause that the Frierdiker Rebbe should talk. My father was one of the people who was passing by. And while he's passing by, the Frierdiker Rebbe stops him and asks him, how are you doing in your health? So my first thing my father said was, mit doch abgerät, aber red nicht jetzt. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, aber ich will ja reden. So my father had to answer that he is having kidney problems, and the doctors warned that he should operate, remove the stones. The Frierdiker Rebbe said, was erzählt man mir Dutkis? Whatever Dutkis means, nonsense. He doesn't want to hear that. What he should do is to drink lukewarm milk, and herring mehechatese. This was about Shemske. What does herring have to do, or milk with kidney stones? Had nothing to do. It was a Rebbe mice. So, of course, my father listened to the Frierdiker Rebbe. He drank the lukewarm milk, he ate the herring, and that was the end of the stones. But it's a Mordecai mice, the Frierdiker doesn't want to hear such a thing, and this is his medicine that he gave, to drink lukewarm milk and a herring. I also want to share with you that my father was very involved with the care of the Rebbetzin. Every day he went to see her, even when she was well. He spoke to her, of course, every day. He was mamish, taking care of everything about the Rebbetzin. When the Rebbetzin was not well, he would be involved in getting x-rays, and he would go himself, travel, who knows where, finding the biggest doctors himself, going with the x-rays. He would go into the doctor's office without even asking permission. He was mamish, teuch im Ganzen in the Rebbetzins health. And he would have to report to the Rebbe right away on the phone. He would talk to the Rebbe, what the doctor said, and all that. So I want to share with you a few beautiful stories. Number one, the Rebbe was so involved and thankful and grateful to my father for taking care of the Rebbetzin, that he also knew that my father used to get up every morning, maybe 3, 4 in the morning, and have a shir with people in the Gemara very early in the morning. And the Rebbe was always concerned if he's coming too late, he's from out of town with the x-rays, is he able to still go to sleep a little before the shir? The Rebbe knew his whole schedule and didn't want that it should shat his gesund. The Rebbe told once to my father that he wants to have a cheshbon of all the expenses that he's laying out for the doctors and for the whatever care for the Rebbetzin. He needs to have an exact cheshbon. Because the Rebbe was concerned that my father is not giving him the full money report, because he doesn't want it. He wants to pay for it himself. He doesn't want that the Rebbe should pay. So the Rebbe said to him, this is very interesting. I wrote a ksubah, and I was mechayiv myself to take care of her, and that's my inyan, and I have to pay for it. And then the Rebbe said, shared the story, that the ksubah that was written on Yudale for the Chasuna got lost. So when it came, the Rebbe is supposed to go home with the Rebbetzin. You're not allowed to go home without the ksubah. So they didn't go home. They went back to the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote over the ksubah b'ksav yad kodshay. This is what the Rebbe told my father and Yechidus, that he shouldn't play games with the bills, because he wrote a ksubah, and the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote this, and he has to pay for it. It's a beautiful story. Also, everyone knows this already, that by the Levaya, right before the Levaya, the Rebbe called my father in, and the Rebbe said to him that in the schus of what he did for the Rebbetzin, this will be making on him, or the English exact words, ledoire doires ad soif kol hadoires, or something, ledoire doires, of what the schus that he took care of the Rebbetzins health. This is also very, very chashiv, what means the Rebbetzin by the Rebbe, and that this is a schus ledoire doires. A lot of other things I might as well share with you. It's Fata Yontif, so it's things that we don't always talk about. It's kedai to mention. The Rebbe knew everything that's going on by Chassidim. He was very concerned for Chassidim. His whole life was the Chassidim, but he also had a lot of Agbas Nefesh, that Chassidim should have been Emes Chassidim. And many times he would pour out his heart to my father about the matziv of the Chassidim. So I'm going to share with you some stories. Number one, the Rebbe very much wanted that the Bachrim should learn Torah Yomim V'Layla. The Rebbe told me on Yechidus once, and it's kedai for every parent to tell their children in their Einekloch. The Rebbe said to me, I asked about his kashrus, and the Rebbe said to me 3 lashonis. The beste his kashrus, the emese his kashrus, the freilichste his kashrus, is zu sein a lamden amiti in Nigla de Teure und a lamden amiti in Pnimius Teure. This was the words of the Heilige Rebbe. This is, you want to be Mekusha to me? This is what I need. Emes is kashrus. The best is kashrus is to be a lamden amiti in Nigla de Teure, in a lamden amiti in Pnimis Teure. So when the Rebbe used to pour out to my father many times on Yechidus, he was very unsatisfied or unhappy. Am lernt nicht Teure in the yeshiva, in the Saal, wie es bedarf zu sein. So he would say to him, to my father, on President Street, there was a kollel, a yeshiva, and a kollel right on President Street, more or less opposite where the Rebbe lived. And the Rebbe said to him, when he passes by 11:30 at night, he hears a Kol Torah there. He passes in 770, he doesn't hear that. This is what bothered him so much. The Rebbe said that. So many different stories. Everybody knows there was a Dolzain Gesund and Stark. There's a Goin, a Rabbi Yitzchak Reitport. Everybody knows he's a Goin Oilam. He used to sit Yomam V'Laila as a Bacha in Yeshiva till 2 o'clock at night. Many times the Rebbe, in my days, going back many years, the Rebbe would make spontaneous visits very late at night, go through the Zal. The Zal was dark. What did he see? One Bacha sitting and learning with a niggin, and this gave the Rebbe so much nachas. We got to know, what did the Rebbe really want? I want to tell you another story. There was a time that the Anhala used to go into the Rebbe once a month, one Thursday night every month, in my days. One time, the Anhala went into the Rebbe, and they came out. Rabbi Mentlik Olav Shalom was red like a beet. The Rebbe must have given them a chelik, like, what was the chelik? And the Bacham lernen is maliknischen lernen, maharvetnischen lernen. So Rabbi Mentlik told this over right then and there when he came out of the Rebbe's room. There were 2 Bachram there who are amongst the Bachram who heard this, took it very to heart, and they memorized, they learned the whole Masechta Bava Basra with the Rashbams by heart in 3.5 months. When Rabbi Mentlik found out this, he went into the Rebbe the next time Dan Holla went in and told the Rebbe the names and what these guys learned the whole Bava Basra from this Yechidus. The Rebbe jumped out of his chair with such a nachas ruach. Was 3.5 Chodoshim ganz Bava Basra with all of it, with all with alle Rashbams, alle Chreis, alle Teisvis. This was the greatest nachas ruach for the Rebbe. That's the Rebbe's nachas ruach is a mahoravit to lernen, melikt and lernen. I rather heard not long ago that the Rebbe used to get through Rabbi Chadakov many times when Gedolim used to come into the Rebbe for Yechidus. The Rebbe called through Rabbi Chadakov that Rabbi Reitport should talk with them in learning. And I heard a story just recently, beautiful story from a son of his, that there was once a time that the Rebbe called in Rabbi Yitzchak Reitport, and he told him that there's a Rosh Yeshiva, an alter Rav somewhere in a father. It's getting late. Something changed here?
Not at all. Everything's fine. You're about halfway through.
I'm finished because I have to go now, but I just want to finish with this story. So the Rebbe he called in Rabbi Reitport, and he said to him that he should go to visit this Rosh Yeshiva or this alter Rav. Hat etwas a Kasche, was man darf ihm verämpfen. Rabbi, of course, went. He took a train and wherever that place was, and he went to this Rosh Yeshiva, and he pretended that he's sitting down himself and learning. And while he was sitting and learning there, the Rosh Yeshiva, this Rav calls him over and he says, and he told him this big shaila that he has. Rabbi said, you know what? Let's learn this Gemara together. And Rabbi Ba'ashgacha Pratis showed him that if he would learn Pshat this way, he wouldn't have the kasha. The guy was really felt a bit taken aback, like this young guy is anyways, he didn't like that idea, like too happy with himself or too proud of himself, whatever. Okay, so Rabbi left. A few months later, this Rosh Yeshiva, this Rav, wrote to the Rebbe with his spilus that a bocher from the Lubavitch came and had zugetroffen at. So the Rebbe called in Rebbe and read him the letter of what this Rosh Yeshiva answered. It just tells you how much the Rebbe wanted our Bochen to liegen and lernen, kennen lernen, liegen and lernen. That should be there, Teirosam Nasai. We want to know what today is Kashris for a Bocher or the Fai. That's this Kashris. There's nothing Poshit, Gaharavit, liegen and lernen. Amit see is from Teire. Anyways, so mein teure, gute Freund, heute ist ein moire dicke Jontef. Aber es ist ein moire dicke Tag, was ist uns mechayev. Not long ago, I heard a tape from Chof Cheshvan, I don't know what year. The Rebbe said some moire dicke words. He was talking about that Chof Cheshvan, the Rebbe Rashab's Yom Haledes. On this day, the Rebbe Rashab gives moire dicke koiches. But I benitzt nicht ois. This is what the Rebbe said. Moire dicke words. If you don't use out this day, wie es bedarf zu sein, you're making a bilbul for the Rebbe Rashab. That means that his koiches that he's giving on this day is not being utilized. This is such sharp words. If Yudalit Kislev is a Zatog, we have to work on this. The Rebbe is giving us today moedike koiches. But if we don't use it to the fullest, what are we doing to the Rebbe? Reminds me of another story, but I really have to go. Reminds me of another moiridik story. But I'm sure you know most of the story. There's a story that the Mittler Rebbe was in the middle of a Yechidis, and there was a whole oilim waiting. In the middle of the Yechidis, he stops. No more Yechidis. And he takes a tilim, and he davens, and he cries for who knows how long. And after that, he opened up the door, weiter mekengem weiter Yechidus. So the next day, Weistas, one of the children, if I remember clearly, asked the Rebbe, Mittler Rebbe, what happened over here? Like you stopped Yechidus with a tilim, what's going? So the Mittler Rebbe said, this is a moiridik story. So the Mittler Rebbe said the following. When he has to answer somebody else on a tikkun, he first has to find that he has bedakis, of course, he has the same problem. And he has to correct it. When he finds the problem and he corrects it, then he could give a tikkun to somebody else. But this time somebody came into Yechidus with something so low and so that he couldn't find in himself anything like that. Bedakis. Here comes the punchline. So Oibazoif, says the Mittler Rebbe, if I can't find it, then I am fooling myself. Because it can't be. Baal Shem Tov says, whatever you see by somebody else is the same when you have it yourself. If I can't find it, no matter what, ich nar sich. Hab ich gedarf beten beim Eibishten, weiß mich, wie ich hab den Problem. Und der Eibisch hat mir geämpft. Also ich hab das ausgefunden. Und ich hab es mit Sachen gewählt. Und nachdem habe ich gekannt, weitergehen an Yechidus. So there's so many moedical lessons from the story. The bittul von a tzaddik a Mittler Rebbe, that no matter what that guy was, it can't be that he doesn't have epis amashahu, and that mashahu, if I can't find it, then I'm fooling myself. Wir können eine ganze Nacht verbringen mit dem Story. Aber ich will sagen jetzt, how I got to the story. So what did he find already? What does this guy write or say that he did that the middle, so what was the thing? So I heard a Nusach that this person hat gehad zu tun mit a teute Mensch. Das heißt, Mishkev Sache mit a Mess. So the middle Rebbe couldn't find. So what did he the Megale given that he sometimes says a Maimer und sie nicht da mekabelt, einmal so hat nicht. Das ist schon, Bedakis heißt es as a Mashpia on a Mekabel. You hear what's going on? So what's negated to this story? So the Rebbe told us, if Chav Cheshvan, it was Chav Cheshvan, if we don't use out to the fullest capacity what the Rebbe Rashab is giving on this day, then we're making a bilbin in him. His Kayochel, his Ashpor is not being niskabel and being used. This is very, very heavy. So today is Azam Moire Digital. We have to give a shackle. Wo bin ich? Is Lachaim, sollte alle Brüder und alle gute Freund, der Eberste soll uns benchen, aber soll ausnitzen dem Tag, wie es bedarf zu sein, geben dem Rebben es wert, aber soll ihm geben Naches und Naches und Naches. Soll können fühlen, dass jeder Reiner hat sich genommen zu der Herzen, zu sein, Chassid, wie der Rebbe will. Achsidische Jid, liegen Achsidis, und kochen sich in Chassidis, kochen sich in dem Ebersten, man hatte sein Bemitzwis, in Avos Yisrael, in alle Sachen, aber früher darf man allein sein, Chassid. Mein Tate, wenn der friedliche Rebbe hat ihm geschickt zu der Mira Yeshiva, believe it or not, he should go to learn there to make Chassidim from the Bachar. So the friedliche Rebbe said, und wie so macht man a Chassid? Am is allein a Chassid. So he told him, Pashit, the way to make Chassidim is you got to be a living example. There's more to a chassid to go follow him and hug him. You got to be for real. We have to really be chassidim. With Azar Rebbe, there's nothing higher. With such a Rebbe, we got to shape up. Gebencht sollte alle Jiden sein, a guten Yontif, und wir sollen gehen von einem Verbringen zu der zweiten Verbringen und werden lebendige, freiliche Chassidim. A gute Nacht, a gute Jahr.
A gute Nacht. Ja, Shakayach. L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim.